All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a book, as I'm sure many of you know, that's really generated a lot of discussion about personal finance over the years.
It definitely has.
And today, our mission, I guess you could say, is to really try to distill some of those core principles about, wealth, financial independence, all the things that Kiyosaki really emphasizes.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating, at least to me, is how Kiyosaki really contrasts his own father, who struggled financially,
Right.
despite having a good education, with his friend's dad,
Yeah.
who was a high school dropout, but became very wealthy. And that's really the foundation for a lot of his kind of unconventional views.
Yeah. And I think right off the bat, using that contrast, Kiyosaki really challenges this deeply ingrained belief that we all kind of grow up with, that, a good education equals financial success.
Definitely.
Pretty bold move right out of the gate.
It is. Makes you really rethink, some of the things that we've been taught about money.
For sure.
So Kiyosaki really argues that traditional education focuses on getting a job, not necessarily building wealth.
Right.
And that's where he introduces this idea of financial intelligence.
Exactly.
But what exactly is financial intelligence, according to Kiyosaki?
Yeah, it's not just about being good at math or, balancing a checkbook, right?
Right.
It's about understanding how money works, like the systems, the rules, the different ways that it can be used to generate more money. And he argues that without that knowledge, even high earners, I think about like doctors and lawyers, they can find themselves trapped in what he calls the rat race.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole rat race concept.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of working hard and paying bills, but never quite getting ahead financially.
For sure.
So how does Kiyosaki define the rat race?
He describes it as this kind of endless cycle of, you work for money, you get that paycheck. Yeah.
You pay your bills, and often what happens is you just accumulate more debt, and you just kind of feel like you're constantly chasing that next paycheck, but your expenses keep rising and you never really build any sort of lasting wealth.
You're just on that treadmill.
Exactly. You're stuck.
Just running and running.
Yeah.
And so this is where I think Kiyosaki introduces this concept of building an asset column, right?
Yeah.
So if the rat race is about income from a job, what exactly are we talking about when we say assets?
Well, in Kiyosaki's world, I guess, he would define assets as anything that puts money into your pocket.
Okay.
Whereas liabilities take money OUT.
Okay.
And he emphasizes that it's not just about what you own, but how that ownership affects your cash flow.
I see.
So, like, for example, that house you're so proud of, it could actually be a liability if, the mortgage payments and the taxes and all the upkeep, if those are draining your finances every month.
So a house isn't automatically an asset?
Not necessarily. Okay, that's pretty interesting, I think, for a lot of people. That's a counterintuitive idea.
Yeah, for sure.
So what would be an example of an asset, then, in Kiyosaki's view?
Like a rental property.
Okay.
It might have a mortgage on it, but if the rent that you collect is covering those costs, A&D, putting money in your pocket every month, well, now you have an asset that's generating income.
So it's really about the cash flow.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming in or going out.
Exactly.
And he talks about even like a small business that generates a profit, even alongside a regular job.
Absolutely.
That can be an example of an asset as well.
Yeah, it's all about creating that income-generating machine outside of your 9-to-5.
And this kind of leads into his idea of minding your own business, right?
Yes.
It's not just about quitting your job and becoming an entrepreneur. It's more of a like cultivating that entrepreneurial mindset.
It is. It's about actively seeking those opportunities to build your asset column, not just waiting for things to happen, right?
Right.
Kiyosaki often uses the example of Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's.
Okay.
Everyone thought he was in the hamburger business, but Kiyosaki argues that Kroc's real genius was that he understood the value of the land underneath those franchises.
Or interesting. So while everyone else was focused on burgers and fries,
right,
he was building an empire on real estate.
Exactly.
That's a really cool example of how a different perspective can lead to, enormous wealth.
Yeah, and it really drives home that point that developing financial literacy and actively managing your assets, those are crucial. It's not enough to just work hard, right? You have to make your money work hard for you.
And this is making me think, too, about how Kiyosaki emphasizes corporations.
Yes.
He talks about how the wealthy, use legal structures like corporations to protect their assets and potentially minimize taxes. But this can seem pretty complex.
It can be.
Especially for someone just starting out on their financial journey.
Yeah, but the key takeaway is that understanding those legal and financial systems,
Right.
that can be a really crucial part of building wealth. And it's not about loopholes or anything illegal, It's about learning to leverage those systems to your advantage.
So it's like learning the rules of the game, even if those rules seem tilted towards the wealthy.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's about leveling the playing field,
By acquiring the same knowledge and strategies that the
Exactly.
wealthy already use.
And Kiyosaki really believes that this is something that anyone can learn, regardless of their background.
But let's be honest, building wealth isn't always easy.
No.
And Kiyosaki acknowledges that, right?
Yes.
That there are roadblocks.
Yes.
Things that hold us back from achieving those financial goals.
Absolutely. He identifies 5 major obstacles: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
Ooh. Okay, so those 5, he believes, can really sabotage our efforts, even our best intentions.
They can.
So let's break those down a bit. Let's start with fear. How does Kiyosaki frame the role of fear when it comes to money?
He says that fear, especially the fear of losing money, can really paralyze us, prevent us from taking the risks that might be necessary to actually build wealth.
I see.
And he uses this maybe surprising example, the Alamo.
Wait, the Alamo?
Yeah.
That's a story about defeat, isn't it?
It is, but that's kind of where Kiyosaki's unique perspective comes in.
Okay.
Because he argues that Texans didn't see the Alamo as a failure,
Okay.
They used it as a rallying cry. He's saying that failure, even in finance, can be a source of, learning and motivation if you choose to see it that way.
Oh, that's such an interesting reframing of, historical event.
Yeah.
So it's not about letting that fear just cripple you. It's about using it as fuel to push yourself forward.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about cynicism? How does that factor into Kiyosaki's views?
Well, he thinks cynicism can blind us to opportunities. A cynic will just kind of dismiss anything that sounds too good to be true. But Kiyosaki argues that winners, they will analyze and assess those opportunities before they pass judgment.
So it's not about being naive.
No.
It's about having a discerning but optimistic kind of approach.
Yeah, exactly. And when he talks about laziness, he doesn't just mean sitting on the couch all day.
Right.
He talks about this idea of laziness by staying busy.
Oh, interesting.
Where we fill our days with all these unimportant tasks to avoid doing the real work that could lead to financial progress.
Oh, that's so relatable. It's so easy to get, bogged down in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
What about bad habits?
Yeah.
We all have them.
Of course.
But how do they relate specifically to financial success, according to Kiyosaki?
Well, he highlights how things like impulsive spending, relying on credit cards, constantly comparing ourselves to others. He says these can really sabotage our financial well-being. They're just patterns that keep us stuck in that rat race.
So it's not just about making money. It's about understanding and changing those behaviors that might be holding us back.
Exactly.
Okay, and then the final one you said was arrogance.
Yes.
So how does arrogance factor into this?
Well, Kiyosaki thinks it's the idea that we know everything, that we don't need to learn from others, right?
Yeah.
And that can prevent us from seeking advice or recognizing our mistakes or adapting when we get new information.
So it's really about humility.
Yeah.
Being open to learning from others and acknowledging that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the contrasting views of Kiyosaki's 2 dads to the concept of the rat race and these 5 major roadblocks. But the real, I guess the meat of Rich Dad, Poor Dad is in those 10 steps he gives, right?
Right.
For awakening your financial genius.
Yes.
So let's dive into those next and see what actionable advice we can unearth.
Let's do it. All right, so as we kind of dig into Kiyosaki's 10 steps for building wealth, one that really stands out is this whole idea of finding a reason.
Yeah.
A reason greater than reality, he calls it.
Right, like a powerful why.
Yeah, a why that fuels your journey.
That fuels your financial journey.
Exactly.
And he really stresses, it's not just about wanting a bigger house.
Right.
Or a fancy car.
Yeah.
It's about having this deep-seated reason that pushes you beyond your comfort zone.
Right.
And and keeps you going when things get tough.
Because they will get tough.
They will.
Yeah.
Kiyosaki actually shares some of his own motivations for building wealth. He wanted to, escape that rat race, travel the world, and really break free from the struggles he saw his own father face, even though his father had a good education.
Yeah.
So these deeply personal goals, they fueled his desire to build wealth. And it's fascinating how he connects those emotional drivers to actually achieving that financial freedom.
Yeah.
It's like he's tapping into something more profound than just, material desires.
Yeah, definitely. And then that leads right into his next step, which is investing in education.
Okay.
But he's talking specifically about financial education. He really believes that knowledge is power, especially when it comes to money.
And he's not just talking about, going to college or getting an MBA, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about constantly expanding your financial literacy.
Yeah.
Through books or seminars or mentors, anything that helps you understand this, ever-changing world of money.
Right. He really believes that investing in your financial education is as important as investing in, stocks or real estate.
Right.
And he even has this really provocative statement. He says, "The rich buy investments, but the poor only buy TVs."
It's pretty stark contrast. But it really does, I think, highlight that difference in mindset.
It does.
And this kind of makes me think about Kiyosaki's emphasis on choosing your friends carefully.
Yes.
And he's not saying be snobby, only hang out with rich people.
No, not at all. His point is that our financial habits and our mindsets, they're often really influenced by the people we spend the most time with.
Right. If you're constantly surrounded by, people who are complaining about money or, afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
It's going to be that much harder to break free from those limiting beliefs.
Exactly. It's like that saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So if you want to improve your financial well-being, surround yourself with people who are, actively learning, growing, and building wealth themselves.
And seek out those mentors.
Yes.
Join those communities of like-minded individuals. Engage in those conversations that are going to, expand your financial horizons.
Right. And speaking of expanding your horizons, Kiyosaki also talks about this idea of mastering a formula and then learning a new one.
Oh, yeah. What does that mean in the context of building wealth? Is he saying, just specialize in one area and then move on to something else?
He's more advocating for this kind of continuous learning, this growth. Kiyosaki believes that the world of finance is constantly evolving, so it's crucial to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
He encourages his readers to really understand one investment strategy, master it, and then explore new avenues for building wealth.
So it's about building that diverse financial skill set.
Yeah.
Constantly adapting, expanding your knowledge base.
Exactly. For example, he learned the ins and outs of buying real estate foreclosures, and he had success with that, and then moved on to other strategies as the market changed.
Okay.
So it's about being flexible.
Being flexible.
Open to new possibilities.
Okay, so we've talked about finding your why, investing in education, choosing your circle wisely, and constantly expanding your financial toolbox. And this brings us to, I think, one of Kiyosaki's more controversial pieces of advice.
Oh, yeah.
Which is pay yourself first. Can you elaborate on that concept? Because it seems a little counterintuitive to traditional budgeting where you pay your bills first and then save whatever's left over.
It does. But Kiyosaki is basically flipping that traditional script on its head. He's arguing that paying yourself first, even if it's a small amount, establishes this really powerful habit that prioritizes your financial well-being.
So by consistently setting aside money for savings and investments, you're reinforcing this belief that your financial future matters.
You are. And it's not just about the actual money you're saving.
Right.
It's that psychological shift, It's about prioritizing your own financial security.
So it's about changing your mindset from scarcity to abundance, from reacting to your finances to proactively shaping them.
Exactly.
But I imagine for someone who's really struggling to make ends meet, this whole idea of paying yourself first can feel impossible. So how does Kiyosaki address that?
He acknowledges that, it takes discipline and a willingness to kind of challenge that conventional wisdom.
Right.
It might mean, cutting back on those unnecessary expenses, finding creative ways to generate extra income, or maybe negotiating better deals with your creditors. The key is to commit to making your financial well-being a top priority.
Okay.
And that might require some sacrifices.
Right.
But ultimately, he argues, it's about taking control of your financial future.
Okay. And he also really emphasizes the importance of seeking out good advisors.
He does?
Like, brokers, accountants, attorneys, people who can help you make informed financial decisions.
Yeah, he really stresses the need to build a team of professionals who are aligned with your goals and, who have a track record of success, so you can leverage their expertise.
Right, enhance your own financial literacy through them.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about this pay yourself first principle, and now let's circle back to one of the most fundamental concepts in Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Okay.
which is really understanding the difference between assets and liabilities.
Yes, this distinction is absolutely crucial to his whole framework. He's really challenging those traditional definitions of what an asset is and what a liability is,
Right.
focusing instead on how those possessions impact your cash flow.
Right. Like we were talking about earlier, a house isn't always an asset.
Right.
If the costs associated with owning that house are actually draining your finances, it's really a liability.
Exactly. So Kiyosaki encourages readers to really focus on building that asset column that we talked about, which generate passive income, things like rental properties or businesses that generate profit, investments that pay dividends. These are the things that are going to help you escape that rat race.
And that ties back to, his whole idea of minding your own business.
It does.
Which, as we established earlier, is about cultivating that entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
Building those income-generating assets.
And he uses that example of Ray Kroc and McDonald's to illustrate this. Kroc's focus on owning the land, not just the hamburger business.
Right.
That's a classic example of building wealth through a strategic approach to assets.
So it's about looking beyond the surface.
It is.
And understanding the underlying value
Yeah.
of different types of assets.
And Kiyosaki also talks about the power of using corporations. How they can be used to protect assets and potentially minimize taxes.
Right. And I imagine for someone who's not familiar with, all the intricacies of business structures and tax law, this can feel a little overwhelming.
It can be. But the main takeaway here is that understanding how those legal and financial systems work,
Right.
that's a really key part of building wealth. And, he encourages readers to learn about those systems, get some professional guidance, and really leverage them strategically to reach their financial goals.
So it's not about finding loopholes
No.
or doing anything unethical. It's about understanding the rules of the game and playing it, strategically to your advantage.
Exactly. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and using the tools that are available.
Right, that are available to anyone who takes the time to learn.
Yes.
Now, Kiyosaki doesn't shy away from the fact that people face challenges when they're trying to build wealth.
He doesn't.
And he identifies 5 major roadblocks that can sabotage even, the best of intentions.
Yeah.
Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
And he really delves into each of these roadblocks in detail, offering insights and anecdotes to show how they can really hinder our financial progress.
So let's explore those a little bit further.
Okay.
Let's start with fear again.
Okay.
Kiyosaki argues that fear, especially that fear of losing money, that can paralyze us.
It can.
And prevent us from taking the necessary risks to build wealth.
Yeah, and to illustrate how to overcome that fear, he uses this historical example, kind of a surprising one, the Alamo.
Right.
He argues that Texans didn't see the Alamo as this defeat,
Yeah.
They transformed it into a rallying cry. It's a symbol of resilience.
Okay.
And he's saying that failure, even in finance, can be a source of learning and motivation, if you choose to see it that way.
It's a really powerful message about, turning those setbacks into opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
So what about cynicism? How does that play into our financial success?
Well, Kiyosaki says that cynicism can blind us to opportunities.
Okay.
While a cynic will kind of dismiss anything that sounds too good to be true,
Right.
winners, they analyze and assess those opportunities before making a judgment.
So it's about maintaining that balance, right?
Yeah.
Between healthy skepticism, but also a willingness to explore new ideas.
Yeah, to be open. And then when it comes to laziness, Kiyosaki, he's not just talking about inactivity, right?
Right.
He highlights this idea of laziness by staying busy,
Yeah.
where we fill our days with all these tasks that give us this false sense of productivity,
Oh, yeah.
but don't actually move us closer to our goals.
Oh, it's like that feeling of being busy, but not actually productive. It's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. And it's about being honest with ourselves about what we're really avoiding and making conscious choices to prioritize the activities that will lead to real progress.
Yeah. And what about bad habits? We all have them.
We do.
But Kiyosaki argues that some habits can be especially damaging to our financial well-being.
He does. He talks about, developing good financial habits like paying yourself first, tracking those expenses, reviewing your investments,
Yeah.
but also breaking those bad habits that can hold us back.
Right, like impulse spending.
Yeah, relying on credit cards, living beyond your means. Those are the patterns that keep us stuck in that rat race.
So again, it's not just about making the money. It's about understanding and changing those behaviors that might be sabotaging our success.
Exactly. And finally, Kiyosaki addresses arrogance.
Okay.
He argues that arrogance, especially when it comes to money, can be a major obstacle to learning and growth.
It's that belief that I already know everything. I don't need to learn from anyone else.
Exactly.
And that can prevent us from seeking out advice, recognizing our mistakes, adapting to new information.
Right. So Kiyosaki encourages his readers to have that humility, to admit when they don't know something.
Yeah.
To be open to learning from others.
So it's about embracing that growth mindset.
Yes.
Constantly seeking knowledge, recognizing that, we're all on this lifelong journey of financial learning.
Absolutely. And that leads into Kiyosaki's more specific advice about taking action.
Okay.
He doesn't want to leave his readers with just theory. He wants to give them concrete steps they can take to start building that asset column and achieve financial freedom.
Okay, so let's dive into those actionable strategies then and see how we can actually apply them to our own lives.
Sounds good.
All right, welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We've really gone through Kiyosaki's core principles, those different mindsets, those roadblocks that can really pop up. But now it's time to get to the real, meat of it. What does Kiyosaki actually recommend?
Yeah.
What actions can we take to start building wealth?
Right, because he's all about taking action, even small steps, to create change.
Right.
Remember, he famously said, most people don't do anything, they just dream about being rich.
It's a good quote.
It is.
It's a call to action. Stop dreaming and start doing.
Absolutely. And one of his key pieces of advice is to look in the right places.
Okay.
He believes that there are opportunities that people miss simply because they don't know where to look.
So what are some examples of that?
He gives this example of finding a condo that was identical to his neighbor's for half the price.
Wow.
Just because he knew to check the foreclosure listings at a bank.
Oh, interesting. So it's about understanding those systems.
Yeah.
And those processes that can lead to some, pretty incredible deals.
And when you do find a good deal, he encourages you to, buy the pie, not just a slice.
What does he mean by that? Is he talking about going all in on every opportunity?
It's more about thinking strategically. He gives an example of buying a large plot of land and then subdividing it into smaller lots to sell.
Okay.
So you control more assets and you can potentially reap greater rewards than if you just bought one small lot.
So it's about maximizing that leverage, right? Thinking beyond the immediate.
Yeah, looking at the long game, not just that immediate gain.
Now, Kiyosaki also really emphasizes controlling your expenses.
Yes.
Is he advocating for extreme frugality?
No, I wouldn't say that. He doesn't say you have to, live like a pauper.
Right.
But he does emphasize the need to live below your means, even as your income grows.
Okay.
He talks about how so many people fall into this trap of lifestyle inflation. As they earn more, they just spend more.
Right. So their expenses rise right alongside their income.
Exactly. And they never really get ahead. It's like that saying, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And, Kiyosaki advocates for building that asset column first and then letting your lifestyle improve.
Okay.
Gradually, as those assets start generating more income. So it's more of a sustainable approach to building wealth.
And this brings us back to, that key principle that we've discussed a few times, this whole pay yourself first. Why does he put so much emphasis on this idea?
Because he believes that it's about establishing that powerful habit, prioritizing your financial well-being. And it's a psychological shift as much as a financial one.
Okay.
Because you're reinforcing that idea that your financial security is the most important thing.
So even if it's, a small amount,
right,
just consistently setting aside those funds, that sends a powerful message to, I guess, your subconscious.
Yeah, it's about changing that mindset from scarcity to abundance, being proactive with your finances.
It's really interesting, how Kiyosaki, how he weaves that psychology and mindset into his financial strategies.
It is.
It's not just numbers and spreadsheets.
No, it's deeper than that.
It's understanding those motivations, those beliefs
Yeah.
that drive our behaviors with money.
Absolutely. And he acknowledges that, this approach does take discipline.
Yeah.
It takes a willingness to challenge that conventional wisdom.
Right.
But he argues the rewards are definitely worth it.
Okay.
As your asset column grows, you'll start to experience that freedom and that security.
Knowing that you're in control.
Yes.
As we kind of wrap up our deep dive here into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's important to acknowledge that, Kiyosaki's ideas have generated a lot of debate, right?
Oh, yeah, they have.
Some people really criticize his methods, his a focus on wealth as the primary measure of success, and his, kind of unconventional approach
For sure.
to finance.
His books have definitely sparked a lot of discussion.
They have.
Both support and criticism. But one thing is for sure, he makes people think differently about money.
Yeah, he's a provocateur.
He is. And he challenges us to question those traditional financial advice. The kind that can often keep us trapped in that cycle of debt.
And whether you agree with all of his ideas or not, there's no denying that his core message about financial literacy is more important now than ever.
It is.
Understanding how money works.
Mm-hmm.
It's essential for navigating today's world and building a secure future, for yourself and your family.
Absolutely. And we really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and, even some actionable takeaways that you can apply.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, that path to financial freedom is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
It is.
It takes knowledge, effort, and a willingness to challenge those assumptions that you might have.
We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas. Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad yourself.
Yeah.
Check out other resources on financial education.
And as you kind of embark on your own journey toward financial well-being, just ask yourself, what small steps can you take today?
Yeah.
What can you do to start building that asset column, creating the future that you really desire?
That's a great question to end on.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.